which I will be watching here soon. So, this book I binged in December. I listened to the audiobook in its day and kind of followed along and highlighted some things. So, I really liked this one. It does feature non-linear storytelling, which is a little different, and I don't know if it's my favorite format for books, but I really enjoyed it. In the end, you see everything's way more connected than you would think, and I enjoyed seeing how different people's lives were connected, and I enjoyed the kind of messaging. This book is really heavy on community and coming together to help each other, and yeah, I found the writing pretty simple but also beautiful and real and relatable. At points, this reminded me a lot of another book that I'm going to talk about that is in my top 10 that I read at the beginning of the year. So I'll let you know which book that is when we get to it. But yeah, I really thought this was a sweet story, and it definitely made me curious to pick up some of his other books. And I know Bear Down is really popular. So yeah, you're trying to figure out who the bank robber is and how the people helped the bank robber escape, if they helped and whatnot. And the story keeps restarting at different points, though. It's very non-linear, so it's kind of confusing, and I did not see who it was coming. So yeah, that's Anxious People. And I do want to read just a couple quotes from it. So literally, it starts out, page 1, I already underlined some things, and it says, "It's always very easy to declare that other people are idiots, but only if you forget how idiotically difficult being human is." Which I thought was so real. And then it says, "Especially if you have other people you're trying to be reasonably good human for, because there's such an unbelievable amount that we're all supposed to be able to cope with these days. You're supposed to have a job and somewhere to live and a family, and you're supposed to pay taxes and have clean underwear and remember the password to your damn Wi-Fi. Some of us never manage to get the chaos under control, so our lives simply carry on. The world is spinning through space at 2 million miles an hour while we bounce about on its surface like so many lost socks." And down here it says, "We pretend we're normal, that we're reasonably educated, that we understand amortization levels and inflation rates, that we know how sex works. In truth, we know as much about sex as we do about USB leads." And I just thought that opened up so strong for the book. And then later on, it says on page 22, it says, "That was a parent's job, to provide shoulders for your children to sit on when they're so little they can see the world, and then stand on when they get older so they can reach the clouds, and sometimes lean against whenever they stumble and feel unsure." And so I just thought all of that was so beautiful. And then another quote I really liked was, "We're just strangers passing each other, your anxieties bravely brushing against mine as the fibers of our coats touch momentarily on a crowded sidewalk somewhere. We never really know what we do to each other, with each other, for each other. No one can really explain either before or after videos, they are always with the same question: what's wrong with me? Why do I feel like this? She's just sad all the time. An evil little creature that wouldn't have shown up on any x-rays was living in her chest, rushing through her blood and filling her head with whispers, saying she wasn't good enough, that she was weak and ugly and would never be anything but broken. And it goes on and on, describing that. And yeah, it was just really beautifully written, and I really like that there is a really strong emphasis on hope in the end and communal support and all of that. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. And then 2 more honorable mentions. I wanted to say my favorite memoir of the year was The Woman in Me by Britney Spears. I talked about it in one of my reading wrap-ups towards the beginning of the year, and it was just so beautiful, and I was so shocked at so many of the things that she went through in life, because we've had such a skewed story told about her for years. And listening to her memoir, it really just gave me such empathy for her, and she's really had like such an interesting life and had so much stuff happen to her that really is just not okay or manageable for any human. So yeah, I really appreciated her memoir. And then my thriller / horror, what's the word? Runner-up I have is You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight by Kaylin Byron. I really liked this. This was one of the first thriller horrors I read, and yeah, I really liked it. It was fast-paced. It gave all the cozy, spooky, scary camp horror vibes, and it had such a twist. It had like a culty element that I hadn't been expecting originally going into it. And yeah, it was just really good. Just all the spooky vibes, and the cult element was really interesting when you get to that. My next honorable mention, honestly, this is realistically one of my favorite books of the year, for sure, but because it's a poetry book, I didn't want to do, I wanted to talk about it separate. But so this is my favorite poetry collection of the year, and it is Dreamwork by Mary Oliver. This was just such a beautiful poetry book. I just related to like everything she wrote, and yeah, I just loved it so much. romance fantasy is where I think romance shines best, but I tried to read a good number of like normal romances this year too, and I did end up really enjoying most of them. So first I wanted to shout out 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. I really thought this was a beautiful romance. I thought the connection between the two main characters was really good. The spicy scenes were really tense and tension-filled, like I like. I thought the chemistry was really steamy. I liked the cultural references and other things brought up in it. And yeah, I hope this gets turned into a movie like Tia Williams' other book with Keith Powers and Gabrielle Union. So I really hope this gets turned into a movie too. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. So that's the first, oh my glasses, that's the first romance I wanted to shout out. And then I also wanted to shout out our Royal Highness. This one's a sapphic romance, and I thought this was super fun, super sweet, short to the point, not longer than it needed to be. They have a little, off to a bad start to friends to lovers storyline, which was cute. And yeah, I really appreciated the Flora defending Millie's honor and stuff like that we had in here. And yeah, it's YA, it was super sweet and fun. And yeah, so that would be my other romance honorable mention for the year that I really enjoyed. And okay, now we are into the top 10. So sit back, relax, and let's get into it. And I do apologize for my crazy neighbors. If you can hear them arguing downstairs, because I can. But okay, so my top 10 are 2 genres. They are fantasy and contemporary. Well, actually a couple of these are historical fiction, but I kind of count that as contemporary. But yeah, let's get into it. So probably my number 1 book of the year is Betty, B-E-T-T-Y, Betty, by Tiffany McDaniel. I loved Betty so much. I thought this was such a heartbreaking, real book. This is the one that is historical fiction, but it's based on the author's family's story, actually. So like her mother and her grandmother's stories. So I loved Betty. I thought that it was just so well done. I thought the themes in this book were outstanding. Again, go check out my reading wrap-up that I talked about this book in, because I read the beautiful quotes from the book in that video. But yeah, this book was just so good, so real. It gives a good look at rural Ohio over the generations. It gives a good look at Cherokee representation. It gives a good look at a mixed child coming about in a racist world. A good look at women coming up in a very patriarchal world. And really not having So this is the book I was thinking of when I said anxious people reminded me of one of my top 10. I was thinking of this book right here. This is just such a beautiful book as well. It looks at Elinor Oliphant, who is definitely like some sort of neurodivergent, though they don't like explicitly state what she's got going on. But she just sees the world very differently and does not pick up on like majority of social cues and stuff, and she's dealing with something traumatic that happened regarding her mother in the past, and so she's going to, like therapy and trying to deal with that. She's like obsessed with this guy she meets that she thinks is gonna make her mom proud, and she meets like a coworker in the meantime who like she's not interested in at all, but who shows her genuine like care that she hasn't experienced before for the first time. So it's just a really beautiful story. It does have like a twist that I didn't see coming, so it is kind of like anxious people in that way. And yeah, it just shows a character dealing with some tough stuff and not really fitting into the world, but living and learning through it all. I really like Elinor's character development throughout the book. It's really, really something to see. And yeah, I liked the representation in this character. And yeah, it's a really sweet story. It's not too long. And yeah, highly recommend. And again, I believe I read quotes from this book in the reading wrap-up video where I talked about it, so maybe check that out. I am so confused what they're shouting out downstairs. Like, who wakes up on a random Saturday and is like, it's time to fight? Like, what? Make it make sense. Okay, the one other historical fiction we have in my top 10 is The Great Alone. The Great Alone. The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. This book is thick, but you will not feel like it when you start it because you get so sucked up into the story. It follows, is her name Lenny? Yeah, it follows Lenny, whose father has decided to move their family to Alaska. He's come back from the Vietnam War difference, and he wants to move them all to Alaska now. So they go to Alaska. It deals with them, learning how to survive in this very harsh place in the winter. And then it also deals with Lenny realizing that her father is abusive and like seeing these, examples of domestic abuse and like wrapping her mind around that. And it also deals with Lenny like falling in love for the first time while going through all of this. And it's such a beautiful story. So incredibly sad at points, like so sad, but such a good story. And again, I think it has some like hope in the end. So yeah, I cannot recommend this book enough. And I really want to try another book from this author because I've heard her other books are wonderful as well. I'm only nervous because like she does write like historical fiction, and for some reason I just, in my head, I'm like, do I like historical fiction? Will I like that? But I loved both this and Betty so much, and I know I used to read historical fiction like when I was in like middle school, and there were like the American Girl doll books and stuff like that, so I know I used to read it, so I don't know what's making me think that I like wouldn't like it. But yeah, so definitely want to try another book by her. Then the next two are by the one and only Sally Rooney, my favorite contemporary author. So ignore that I basically like scribbled on this cover. This is Conversations with Friends. Conversations with Friends. Conversations with Friends by Miss Sally Rooney. And this actually was turned into a show. It used to be available on Prime, but I don't know if it is anymore. So I don't know where you can watch it. But it has Joe Alwyn, the guy who is an actor but also dated Taylor Swift for like 7 years or something. So it has him in it, in the show, and so I watched the show first and really liked it. Then read the book and loved the book too. This, I feel like, it still deals with really deep themes like all of Sally Rooney's books, but I low-key feel like this is the most like, I feel like this is the most almost like upbeat out of all 3 of her books. Well, now she has 4 books I haven't read Intermezzo yet, but I feel like this is kind of the most upbeat of her books. Like it's still like sad at a lot of points, and kind of deals with Frances trying to like kind of come to terms with her place in the world. She has like a kind of like strained father relationship. Like her dad is a drunk and like not like hasn't really been there, and she doesn't feel really like connected to him as far as like family goes, and I don't think she has any siblings. And her mom's kind of judgy, and she's like roommates with her ex Bobby, who is very like opinionated and strong-willed and has very like strong beliefs, and Frances can kind of get into like miscommunications with Bobby at times because Bobby has very, you know, like very like strong opinions and whatnot. So she still kind of likes Bobby, but Bobby is like very like here and there, and she doesn't believe in relationships and whatnot. So she's just like friends with Bobby right now. And then she meets Nick, who's the husband of this woman, Melissa, who compliments Frances's work. And then Bobby gets a crush on Melissa, and Frances gets a crush on Nick. So the book kind of follows Frances as she navigates these confusing, messy relationships between, you know, these 4 people, basically, her and Bobby, her and Nick. And then, you know, we know that there's Nick and Melissa and Bobby and Melissa. So, yeah, but we just get Frances's POV. But it's very interesting, some of the stuff she'll like say, or that her, you know, point of view will say is very, just like relatable still, even though she's in like a very different, like very messy and unique situation. Like her and her thoughts and whatnot are still like very relatable at points. So yeah, I feel like this is kind of the lightest material wise one of Sally Rooney's works, but it does like still have those very like deep topics. it was in use when I came back from my errands today. And then the second Sally Rooney book I read this year was Beautiful Worlds, Where Are You? Beautiful World, Where Are You? Beautiful Worlds, Where Are You? And I loved this book too. When I first started this book, I wasn't sure if I was going to like it as much because it just has a very different tone than the other two books that were previously out by her. But I ended up really liking it by the end of it, and this might actually be my second favorite book. Like Conversations with Friends, I really love to do, and Normal People has to stay at the top because it was just such catharsis for me. But this one might be in my second place spot for Sally Rooney because I just ended up loving it so much. It follows Eileen and what's the other one's name? Eileen and Alice. Yeah, Eileen and Alice. And they're friends. And they're separated right now because Alice is like doing a book tour. And Eileen is like working an office job back home in Europe. So Eileen's like going through the States for a book tour. And yeah, so part of it is third-person POV, you following them about their lives and their respective relationships. And then part of it is like first-person POV when you get the emails sent between the two of them where they're like pouring their guts out to each other, and it's just really raw and beautiful. And they'll go off on all these random tangents, and I love it. I feel like it's exactly how I am when I'm talking with a close friend. So yeah, their friendship is really beautiful. The only thing I don't like is they had like a really weird fight at the end of the book, and I feel like it kind of put a damper on their relationship for me, because I'm like, how could you like have such a like just such a weird fight, like being that close? Like, I don't know, it just seemed off to me. But besides that, I loved their friendship. Eileen was my favorite. I didn't like Alice as much, but I did still relate to Alice. I just felt like Alice was a bit like self-centered at times and like not the best friend to Eileen. So I feel like I liked Eileen more and I related to her, although I did relate to Alice at points as well because Alice was dealing with some difficult emotions. But Eileen is like working this office job she feels very like unfulfilled with, and she's kind of just going through the motions, and she doesn't really like understand her place in the world. And then she's been like in love with this guy she's friends with who like she hooked up with once, and he's like in love with her too, but she doesn't like realize that he's in love with her too. So basically like the two of them need to communicate, but they don't. And so you also see like her like dynamic with that friend of hers too, and it's just very interesting. And then for Alice, you see her dynamic with this new guy she starts dating, but I didn't like Alice's love interest, Felix, so let's not talk about him. But yeah, I think about this one quote in the book all the time, where one of them is like, I've had to like go through this alone, like trying to figure out with no one to teach me. And I like think about that quotes often because that's literally how I feel. But yeah, there's just so many quotes. Like, it's just so freaking good. Like, it's just so good. And the discourse is just like so like it's just so real and Sally Rooney's books. But if you like getting real introspective, okay, and you have all these like thoughts and feelings and you embrace them and explore them and feel an overwhelming sense of confusion at everything that you are sometimes and everything that you feel sometimes, then I think, or things that you don't feel, then I think you will really enjoy Sally Rooney's books. But like here I see one of them said, sometimes I think I'm being punished, like God is punishing me, or I'm doing it myself, I don't know, because like when I feel good, something bad happens. And then over here, which I feel like I felt like that before at times too. And what is it? There's just so much that I have like underlines, and I'm pretty sure I read my underlines before again, like in my reading wrap up. So check it out. But yeah, it was just really interesting. And yeah, I loved Eileen so much. Like so much. So much. Oh, and we get to see like a bit of the like kind of POV following like their love interest too. So again, I didn't really care for Felix, but for Simon, like I liked his the little like point of view we got following him, because yeah, I thought he was an interesting character too. He's like Simon's Catholic, and he's kind of like grappling with his beliefs and his life and how they intersect. So I kind of liked that too. And yeah, it just ended up being a really beautiful book. Really beautiful. I'm like looking at a lot of my underlines now because I'm like, this is so cute. So cute. There's stuff about them deciding to put their energy into being happy, and there's just so many beautiful things. So many beautiful things. So, yeah. Eileen talks about how she used to feel like awe about rain and flowers, and there's just a lot of just like interesting discourse in there. Stuff that I found just really beautiful and real. But yeah. Anyways, well, it's like a historical urban fantasy is how I would describe it. But if you don't know, urban fantasies take place in our worlds. So it's not like in some fey land. No, it's on our world. So this takes place in London, but just with some form of magic. So this isn't going to be like high fantasy, like fey and goblins. And no, it's with human people in our worlds, with our systems of schools and all that with some magic. So it follows 4 students who have all been brought to this Oxford University, and the magic that takes place in this book is they do silver working, which is where you, through translation, can produce silver bars, and you can use silver bars to do things. So if you find like the translation for a word, like the exact translation, or not the exact translation, but since you can never find the exact translation, the bar will be like whatever is missing in translation. That'll be like the magic. But so it's kind of confusing, honestly, the magic system in this book. But I really enjoyed it. It follows these 4 students, mostly Robin, but we do get a little interlude of the other 3 as well. And it follows them like going to this school, and this is during 1828, so a lot of imperial stuff is going on right during this book. And they begin to sort of realize the effects this empire is having on themselves and their people, because they all come from different places. And it's just really interesting. I loved the college vibes. I loved the like beginning where they were bonding together. I loved the like questions on like imperialism and the like anti-colonial like messaging in there. And I feel like this author, R.F. Kuan, is like very smart, like very intelligent. She has a bunch of footnotes in this book, and while I didn't necessarily agree with every footnote, like one she had was talking astrology, and I was like, okay girl, like we don't gotta do that. Like you don't gotta be like, oh, astrology's silly, like you've never studied it, that's not your thing, stay in your lane. So I did get a little salty at that point. But besides that, like most of the footnotes I thought were very like interesting and added some depth and perception to the story. And yeah, I just felt like the author, you could tell, was very intelligent. I felt like the story was important, and I felt like it really made you feel things with stuff that happened to the characters, between the characters, etc. Even some of the side characters that we didn't see very much left a big imprint on me, like Anthony and what's his name, Griffin? Was that his name? I think it was Griffin, but I could be wrong. But like even some of the side characters like that made a big impression with me too. So yeah, I thought it was really well written and a super interesting story. And yeah, I definitely want to write something else by this author. So that is Babel. It was an interesting concept for the magic system too. It was just rather confusing. I saw someone who was like, I feel like she doesn't trust her reader enough to get it, like she overstates things. And I was kind of like, I disagree. I feel like the context she adds is very helpful, so that her like story isn't being like misinterpreted. And then next we have The Invisible Life of Addie Larue by V.E. Schwab. I loved this book. It's very slow paced, but it's so interesting. It follows this girl who is about to get married off to like some guy she doesn't know and doesn't want to marry, and it's like the 1800s or something. And so she goes and prays, you know, to be rescued from the situation, basically. And she was always told not to pray to the gods that answer after the dark, but she didn't listen because she was in dire need of help. So the god that answered after dark was kind of like this devil-like creature, and he, you know, he's like, okay, I'll make a deal with you, and the deal is he'll give her endless time until she's tired, but no one will be able to remember her. So whenever someone turns their back, they won't be able to remember her, even if they just had the most beautiful connection with her. So it was a really good story. It really dealt with like existential crisis feelings. It really dealt with the question of like being remembered, being, you know, loved, you know, valued, all of that. There was a relationship between her and this other guy later on in the story, and he had his own thing he was dealing with. So she's able to have some sort of relationship with this guy about midway through, and it's different with him. Like, she's not having to deal with basically like the curse part of the deal with this guy. So you get to see her like fall in love, and you also get to see her fall in love earlier in the story with showing some of the other people she falls in love with that can't remember her, so that she'll go and like meet for the first time again day after day because she loves them, but they can never remember her, so they fall in love with her every time. So yeah, it was just really good. Her and the dude she falls in love with later in the book are cute. There's also like a girl she falls in love with at one point that she meets like for the first time day after day earlier in the book. That's cute. The boy she has a relationship with like in the second half of the book, he also like has like other relationships kind of mentioned, which are interesting as well. And yeah, it just was super interesting. I really like V.E. Schwab's writing. I loved Vicious by V.E. Schwab as well. So I was excited to read another book by the author, and I really loved The Invisible Life of Addie Larue too. So yeah, definitely recommend. It is slow paced, but it's so worth it in my opinion. Then we have The Stolen Heir by Holly Black. This follows Seren, who's basically like a princess or queen from a different court who you see in The Queen of Nothing, Jude making a deal for. So it focuses on her, follows her, and she goes on this journey with Oak, Jude's younger brother from the Folk of Air trilogy. And it deals with a lot of interesting themes about like her being made from sticks and snow and not knowing if that makes her like as worthy as a human, or as a being to not be like human or whatever, which was also something I really enjoyed in Frankenstein, that sort of question too. But it dealt a lot with that, which I thought was really good. The magical elements I thought were really strong in this book and showed even more than in the Folk of Air trilogy. I liked the cameos of the little like things said about like Jude and Gordon ruling was interesting. Oak was cute, very dashing. When he showed up, he was kind of giving Garden, she was kind of giving Jude. Like, I really liked the story. I didn't like the second book as much when I read it, but I really liked this one. So that's The Stolen Heir. Then we have the next two are controversial. We have Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. A lot of people who loved the first book did not like this one. I liked this one more than the first one. I feel like for the first one, in the beginning half, I was just kind of like, okay, I wasn't convinced on the characters falling in love with each other. and like I didn't feel like they had enough of a build up. And the second like third of the book, the writing was really beautiful, but the first 2/3 I was kind of like whatever. And this one, however, I felt like the writing was really beautiful. I highlighted so many gorgeous quotes. I like that our main character is like, I guess feels like a stronger character in this one. I liked that we get to see the depths of Roman's love. In this one, I liked when they were together and they had the chemistry. They're done pretending they don't like each other, so you get to see their love when they're together. It's really strong. I love the I can't say the trope because it's kind of a spoiler, but I love the trope that's in here about the like, okay, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. I love the like re-remembering trope where it's like where you can feel something's missing, like where he can feel something's missing, and the like, you know, immediately like being in love again when you find that person again. I love that trope. It's in Shatter Me in the added books, so like the last 3 out of the 6 in that series too, and I love that trope. And yeah, I just really enjoyed this book, so it's going on my favorites of the year. And then also controversial, I loved Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. That one was Rebecca Ross. This one is Rebecca Yarros. I loved Iron Flame. Were Xaden and Violet fighting an unnecessarily long amount in this book? Yeah, they were. But did their love get so much deeper in this book? Yeah, it did. And were the dragons like even funnier and so cool in this book? Yeah, they were. And did the story have so much more depth in this book? Yeah, I think it did. So I just really loved this one. I think the ending was so shookening. I think the fact that Violet almost did too, if you know, you know, is like so, because they're so alike, they're so much more alike than they think. And yeah, I felt like it was a really strong story. I loved the side characters. I love Rhee, I love Riddick, I love Imogen, I love Sawyer. Like I love all these like side characters too, which is really cool when like the full cast is like lovable and interesting. The only character I really didn't like was 1, the big bad guy, 2, Dane's dad, and 3, Xaden's ex-girlfriend. Like why she was in there. She was an unnecessary character, I feel like, just put in there to make them fight more, and she was extremely annoying. But besides those 3 characters, like I really liked the book. I think the like magic with the griffins versus dragons is like versus wyvern are like very, very interesting. I think it's a very interesting concept. And yeah, I'm really enjoying it, and I can't wait for the 3rd book